So that's supper. It's beets, which I made with that Alfredo sauce that was given to us. So I'm very thankful. It's not something that I would ever buy, but well, the beets I would. The Alfredo sauce, no. But I didn't make it with milk or as directed at all. What I did was I just was cooking the beets in saucepan. I sprinkled the powder on top and I put some water on and I mixed it in. That's what I did. So I don't know, it might be terrible. But anyway, I'm trying to eat enough of this so that I don't eat the chocolate cake, because I did enjoy some of the chocolate cake already and it's very good. Oh, sorry about all that. I have pinata stuff in the way. So now James is having a hard time getting around.
A little. Tired, but not so tired that it would be a passable obstacle. Okay, so what are we talking about? Oh, you were talking about
Medieval England.
We're talking about medieval England or the course?
Oh, well, whatever.
There we go.
The course. We've already mentioned the first disc.
Yeah.
You can talk about the other 5, 6, 4.
Well, the thing is, like most great courses, we got to say, you know, sometimes I worry that we do too many negative reviews and stuff like that.
No,
or
but we
flippant reviews.
How many negative reviews do we do of the great courses?
I think it's only the astronomy and the physics stuff. And
there was one business one that was about color that I was
that poor
but I don't
fella.
think we've done a review about it, but it was so bad.
Well, there was one where the guy was kind of had a business thing approach to psychology or something like that. It was pretty bad, but you know, like how many of these great courses have we whizzed through now? It's got to be dozens. Huh?
Oh, I think it's over 100. It's a lot.
Well, there we go. And you know, so far it looks as though
I
they're
was
getting...
keeping track of it all so that I'd know not to get the same one again, but we seem to remember anyway.
Yeah, I think we once got one that was a duplicate. So you do a good job of that. But speaking of doing a good job, it looks as though they're less than 5 out of more than 100 that flunked out. So what does that mean?
As far as we're concerned.
They got 95%. And the whole thing is, 95% on almost any marking scale is an A+. So great courses get A+ from both of us. So, you know, that's 2 thumbs way
awesome.
up,
and
as they say.
I mean, some of them are just incredibly great. Like the ones that we watched about the brain.
It just frazzled my brain watching it.
Totally.
You know what I'm saying?
Awesome.
So, yeah, you know, like I don't think any of these would ever give you a grad school level of, you know, it's like introductory stuff. But if you got like 100 courses of these courses and really applied yourself to them, you'd be so much smarter than the average pro that it would be, you know, it'd be shock and awe when they were talking to, if they actually were able to apprehend how superior you were.
Now, I would have brought my notes out to talk about this, but they're under pinatas.
There you go. So
you're just going to have to deal with
you
James,
guys
who
gonna
knows
have
a
to
lot
wait.
more about the subject than I do.
Yeah, but I haven't taken notes. It's just going to be off the top of my head. I don't have much to say except, you know, like it is like it's a review for me because I took a course, great course from here. We're given positive reviews. So from Dave Hay out of the University of Lethbridge, and he does a great course on British. It was medieval England, but it's he does it on Britain. So he includes Wales. I talked about Wales, Arthur, and stuff like that. And he includes Scotland. He doesn't include Ireland because he says that's not really Britain.
Interesting.
It's, you could call it part of Great Britain, or Greater Britain, or something like that. It's just, it's largely a matter of definition. You know what I'm saying? How do you, you know, how you cut up plant species and stuff like that. It's always in a state of flux, right? So, same sort of thing with the way you cut things up in geographically. And that's when you're categorizing, but also, of course,
I don't know anything about this stuff. I just, it's all, when I hear about this, I'm like, I remember listening to James talk about or whatever sometimes.
You can find out about Richard the Lionhearted. or she calls him the Lionheart, and the Third Crusade. You can find out about King Canute, who ordered the tides to not come in, and he was making a point. He wasn't arrogant the way I was taught. King Canute was a crazy nut. He was telling the tide not to come in. Of course, it did. Got his little shoey wooies wet. That was the shoey wooies was from Presidents of the United States of America. Did you ever hear that song? They're singing about shoey wooies. Yeah. That first album of theirs, I think it was their first. Wow, just one mega monster hit after another, or things that should have been mega monster hits. What else does this? I mean, it goes all the way down to 1485. Who would have thought that the Middle Ages went to 1485? That's just 7 years before Columbus.
Well, I found it interesting to know how long ago slavery stopped in the area.
Yeah. You know, someone once said it's the glory of Christianity that it got rid of slavery twice, and then they said it's the shame of Christianity that they had to get rid of it a second time. But the important thing is it got rid of it twice, so can't say that about, like Buddhists used to have slaves in their lamaseries or monasteries, whatever they're called. And, well, that's awful, those are religious slaves.
Okay, do they still?
I sure hope not. They wouldn't be allowed to do it because Tibet's in China. Tibet's, of course, communist China's had their own form of slavery and stuff like that. Basically, ever since right from the get-go. So that'd be from 49. I think they're better about it, but than they were under Mao. But that's not to say they're good. At any rate, it's amazing. Yeah. You'll read Shakespeare, there's no real mention of slaves, It wasn't a big institution, then it came back in. I found out where it came from in the New World. I kind of knew it would be this way, but apparently the experts for the Portuguese and the Spanish, one or the other or both, came from Egypt. So Egypt, wonderful place for doing and I'm being ironic, for doing plantation agriculture. Right? So it was also being done in the lower Tigris-Euphrates Valley and stuff like that. They could have gone there for so-called expertise, but I'm not sure if there was much of that. They had a big slave rebellion there. Many hundreds of years earlier. It lasted, I think, for 8 years. We talked about that before. But yeah, there's lots of stuff in here. Courtney Love. There's that's not Courtney Love. That's Courtney Love. So I wonder if her name is made up. It's funny. It's like a pun on Courtney Love.
Actually, pretty good.
Yeah. And Chaucer and the Rise of English. That's awesome.
I missed that part.
Yeah, well, I slept through it too, but
Must have been coconut.
it's nothing wrong with it. Like I'm sure it's good, but I'm just on a chemo that's very powerful, and sometimes it knocks me out. Even when I want to listen to something. Anyway, there's stuff on what inspired Braveheart. Can you call Braveheart inspired? Anything that's got Mel Gibson in it, you can't. When you use the word inspired, it's somewhat of a misnomer. But there we go, mischaracterization. The epithet is just wrong. So I wish I had the notes to go with, because it's usually better when you've got the notes and then you refer to me. I'm kind of see. Here it is.
I'm sorry.
Well, don't apologize, because you do a good job. But here are the notes, and then over on this side, footnotes, right? Notes and footnotes.
So it usually works out pretty well.
Yeah. So I'm just an ancillary sort of.
I'm going to take a lot of notes right now. We're watching Gnosticism.
Wow, that was another great course, and it's a really great course, because I don't know much about this stuff. And Pauline,
Nothing.
nothing, she says. So I wasn't going to put words in her mouth, but she's finding out there's a lot of like Christianity's different from a lot of religions
Well, I knew
because heavy, different interpretations.
yeah,
that
even
got
like when you look
crushed
at
by
it, amazes me
Catholicism starting
when you
about
read the
300
Bible,
AD.
because like I know I was raised on it, James was raised on it, and I would argue with my dad about it when I was a teenager. I'm like, it contradicts itself. It's not true because it contradicts
Yep.
itself. And what I didn't understand and what my dad didn't explain to me well is it is the different books. It's different. It's a collection of different books. They're just very little books, and they're from each different author has their own view on what happened.
Yep.
So, because that's what happens, you know, you have something big happens, something miraculous, whatever, or something just headline news, and you have a whole bunch of interpretations of what happened. One person saw one thing, one person saw another. They remember it a little bit differently before they got the chance to write it down or have somebody write it down for them.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, right? And yeah, so you just have to look at it that way. And then, so people who say, "Oh, yeah, it's all true," and it's like, true. How do you rate true, right? It's not all accurate. It can't all be accurate because it contradicts itself.
This is true,
But-
especially if you look at the New Testament vis-a-vis the Old Testament.
And so that's covered with this Gnosticism thing, and it explains it pretty well. And James has mentioned to me before, he's studied Hebrew a lot.
At university and on my own.
And so there's an instructor that he had that knew the Bible very well and was interested in such things. And so they were learning different books that that hadn't made it to the Bible. Like the one where the crosses were talking and stuff. What do you think?
Oh, well, that one,
Am I getting it wrong?
well, that's not
I might
really in
be
the
getting it
Bible,
wrong.
but that's the vision of the root or something like that. So that was,
See, I'm getting it wrong.
well, you
I should
remember,
let you talk.
know how long ago that was?
I don't
That's
know.
like 10 years ago.
Well,
I'm impressed. you
I
remember.
thought it was interesting.
Yeah, it was very interesting. But I think that was just some poet's fantasy about 1,000 AD or something, or a little bit earlier, but not much. So that's an Anglo-Saxon. But
Well, who knows?
yeah,
But anyway, so this.
but that could have been, like it could have made it into Holy Scripture. I mean, what you find with Gnosticism is a lot of stuff just got blocked out, right?
Yeah.
Didn't make it in the New Testament.
Oh, but we're not supposed to be talking about Gnosticism right now. It's just that I find it very interesting. We went through the first disc yesterday, and I'm like, I got to go through this whole thing again because this is all new to me.
Yeah.
And I
it
think
was
it's
very
new to a lot of
effectively
people.
crushed by the Latter-day Christians, which means starting 300 AD, which isn't that Latter-day by comparison. 2019. There was a lot of crushing, and it was very effective. But this stuff was got. Where was this, in Egypt or something like that? Nag Hammadi codices. And
We'll talk about that one later
exactly.
because
We'll talk about this one
it's
later
awesome.
too.
We
Yeah.
will because once I excavate my notes
There we go.
From under the
Little
pianos.
field archaeology here,
Yeah.
indoors field archaeology.
Well, you can talk about some things. How about you talk about what's her name?
Alf Giffa. Okay, spoiler alert. There is a. Do we have a little time on the thing?
Before I eat things I shouldn't be eating anyway. You have lots of minutes. You can talk.
Oh yeah, there we go. Go and take one.
At least 10 minutes.
So there's the Bayeux Tapestry, which was commissioned, they're pretty sure, by William the Conqueror after he conquered England. And it tells the story mainly in picture. There's the occasional caption of William's conquering of England, 1066 BC, and the lead up to it. And there's one. There's most of the details I can kind of figure out. I mean, there are very few captions, so I go, what's happening here? You know. So it shows King Harold, William's predecessor, getting killed, all this kind of stuff. I think he got whacked with an arrow, got shot in the eye or something like that. So that made the succession simpler, right? Okay, you know, like my predecessor's dead, one of my archers killed him. So, but there's this one crazy detail. There are only 2 women in this tapestry, and this tapestry is incredible. I guess you kind of got a picture. I'm probably overstating the case. A gym where the tapestry is put around the walls. There's that much tapestry. I don't think it's as big as a gym, but it's a fairly big room. I don't want to overstate the case, but there's a lot of tapestry, and there's a lot of story to be told. And there's lots of men fighting, dying, betraying each other, so on and so forth. There's even a comet in there. You know what that? Halley's Comet appears in it as a premonition to, sort of like an omen predicting some sort of change. And from William's point of view and his supporters' point of view, a positive change. But for the English people, not that positive, at least initially. Anyway, there's 2 women. Of all these characters, all these details, there's 2 women. And they know one is the wife of Edward the Confessor, who was the predecessor to William the Conqueror. I think it was Edward the Confessor. Some sort of Edward. No. It wasn't an Edward. I've forgotten the name of the dude. But anyway, doesn't matter. He's a very religious guy, and he didn't have any kids. And that's why there was this big problem with his succession, where you get a French duke. He wasn't even a French king laying claim to the British throne. Isn't that weird? A Viking French, spoke French, claimed a right to the.
But then they talked about, you should talk about the Tudors too, actually.
Well, it's fascinating. You see, this is the thing. One of the things that helped, that contributed to the English giving up on kings so easily, because it always helps when it comes to fomenting a rebellion when a dynasty or a succession of dynasties are formed. So the Tudors were actually a Welsh dynasty, right? And then, there was this kind of tradition of the dynasties being foreign. So William the Conqueror, he's a Norman who speaks French. He's a Viking who speaks French. That's 1066. And then, the people who came after him, his dynasty kind of ended, but I think they call one the Angevin dynasty. Well, that's Anjou, where Anjou Paris presumably come from. Well, that's in France, right? It's not even in northern France. It was northern central. Well, northern central, northwestern central, something like that. It's hard to explain, but it's not coastal, right? Mm-hmm. And so then it was just like basically French dudes, even though eventually they lost their possessions in France and stuff like that. After Joan of Arc, after Henry V, I think it was Henry VI who lost heavily and seriously in France. So then you get the Tudors, and they're foreigners, they're Welsh people. And then, what happens is Queen Elizabeth doesn't have any offspring, right? Dynasty ends, and the closest relative, at least the judge by the law or whatever, stuff like that, was a Stuart. Well, a Stuart is like Rod Stewart's the Scottish name, right? In Stuart. And the Stuarts, James the First of England is James the Sixth of Scotland. So he's a king of Scotland, the king of Scotland. So all of a sudden you end up with the Stuart dynasty. Well, the Stuart dynasty ran into a huge problem because, they were just unpopular. The country basically turned to some sort of Protestantism. It wasn't very Protestant. Anglicanism isn't very Protestant. It's kind of like a nationalistic capitalism. Or capitalism, what am I saying? Catholicism. So Oliver Cromwell got rid of those, got rid of them after a couple of kings. And then they brought them back in, and then there was the Glorious Revolution. It's another kind of capitalist revolution, or pre-capitalist revolution, maybe. Yeah, you could call it capitalist, not industrialist. And that one in 1689, 1688, 1689, they called it the Glorious Revolution. There's hardly any fighting. And all of a sudden you had the Stuart line maintained, but it was imposed by democracy, semi-imposed by Dutch ruler, right? It wasn't even a king. I think they call him a stadtholder. So, and then what happened was, after that, you end up with a German line taken over, right? And it helps when they're foreigners. Right? It helps because they're just more unpopular. Sometimes you get dudes who basically can't speak the language. For example, the rulers of Egypt, the line that ended up with Cleopatra, they say the first one of that line, they were Greeks, to learn the native Egyptian language was Cleopatra herself. Was basically the last of them.
Interesting.
So they were in for almost 300 years, I'd say, the Ptolemaic dynasty.
And
So,
if you can talk about Alfred the Great,
I don't know that much about it. I think, where would he be? About 800. He fought against the Vikings and stuff like that. And he also, I think, had a lot to do with kind of maybe getting the English language, getting it to become a literary language and stuff like that, formalized. So I think the first English would roughly be something like Babel, which might be 500 AD. I don't think they're very firm on the dating on that sort of stuff. So it took a while. I mean, we tend to think of when we're dealing with medieval history, 300 years. That's kind of like 30 years or something like that.
that's all I really wanted to talk about this course.
Did you want to
anyway.
talk about Alf Gifford or something like that?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. So you switched it over. And I just switched over, segued over. I don't care. But, so Alf Gifford, this was the Bayeux Tapestry. And it's just this woman. It's very strange. Imagine, I believe she's sitting. And she's kind of framed by an architectural device. And there is this strange thing. I think he's called a cleric. And he's kind of like a touching or something like that. And they're going, who is this Alf Gifford, which means gift of the elves, or of an elf. And who is this strange cleric? And then there are weird details, like there's a mandrake, which is kind of like a fire-breathing dragon. In the lower, I believe it's the lower margin, they have margins on this thing, and some of them are just like, the details on the margins are kind of like decorative. But this thing, they're wondering, hey, maybe it's have a significant meaning. And so they're like, there was a guy, what was his name, Fraser or something like that. He went through a list of all the Alf Giffers in English history and he said, I can't find one who's anything like a reasonable suspect. Not one. So he said, it's some Alf Gifford who never heard of. And so I did this paper. I whacked it out in a semester. And I was taking 2 courses and working full-time at the same time, equivalent of a 7-day work week. And I wasn't a spring chicken. And I'm going, I'm going to go through what this Fraser, whoever it was, did, and other people did. I went through all the Alf Giffords in history in order. And what I was saying to myself and to the reader was, the most recent is going to be the most likely suspect. Because what William the Conqueror is doing, when he's doing this Bayeux Tapestry, is he's laying claim to the throne. He shows Harold getting killed. He's the guy who whacked him. So might makes right. But that isn't the only thing. He's saying he has a right to the throne by inheritance. So Alf Gifford, that's an Anglo-Saxon name. Right? And so it's got to be some sort of Anglo-Saxon who has a claim to the throne. And, he's disparaging it because this woman's being touched by a cleric. This is bizarre, right? This is something that's, it's a great soap opera, if nothing else. But I'm amazed at how people can't figure it out. And you know what screwed Fraser and everyone else up? You see, like I believe in creativity, sometimes you just plow the field, sheer plod makes plow down Cillian shine, which is Jared Manley Hopkins. You're getting that quote for free. How often can you get a free quote? You know, a free quote from a car dealership or something like that. Well, not so much a dealership, but for, you know, for plastic surgery or whatever. Free quote right here. And, you know, sometimes just sheer plodding can make stuff brilliant. But, you know, it's not just sheer plot. You gotta find out how people made mistakes. And people make mistakes by lazy thinking. So, what is it? The last Alf Gifu. We know her by the name of Emma, her Norman name, her real name. She was given Alf Gifu as a name when she became an English queen. So that's how they got screwed up. Now, why is it significant? She had lots of, well, not lots of kids, but I believe it was 4 of them, by at least 2 different husbands. So she was married to one of the last Anglo-Saxon kings. He lost out to a Viking king called Canute, which is the cognate of our word knout, which means whip. So he was a real whip, I'm telling you, like a real whippersnapper. He owned a lot of land, like Denmark, England, and junk like that. Anyway, he married her, right? So she became, and he was very. I don't know what her. I think she was just attracted to powerful guys. I'm not sure what was happening, but they were attracted to her. Yeah, hopefully it was mutual. But what happened was, when she was, when the Vikings were invading, Athelred the Unready, her Anglo-Saxon husband, this is before she got married to Canute, and Athelred the Unready was still alive. He sends her off to Normandy, where she came from originally, for safety's sake, I guess. And what happened was, the story went that she actually had to do an ordeal. It wasn't an ordeal by fire, it was an ordeal, I think, by heat. She had to walk on several heated plowshares to prove that she hadn't had sex with a cleric in France, in Normandy.
What in the world? Where did that go?
Something slipped down.
Something in my dress.
Yeah, but believe me, there's all sorts of stuff, you know, like Anna Kournikova inspecting herself, her bikini, see if something's got bottom part.
It doesn't matter. I'm happy that I didn't get beets all over. See, this, I wasn't wearing this dress earlier today, but I said, well, I'm eating beets, and I almost wrecked my dress making the beets, the dress that I was wearing earlier today, which is a very pretty dress, and I didn't want to wreck it.
Nice dress that you got.
Well, yeah, but if I got beets on it, I don't think it would matter.
Not so much. Pretty close to color.
Yeah.
Anyway, what happened was, you see, around that time, after she got back from Normandy, she had a girl. And the timing was really suspicious. You know, that girl could have been fathered by a cleric. And that's doubly bad, because a cleric means he is a priest or something like that. I think he was even higher up than a priest. And he shouldn't be having any hanky-panky with anyone.
But it sounds like she was a foxy lady.
Foxy, exactly right. At any rate, and like I say, she had to go through, according to the stories, had to go through an ordeal to prove that she'd been faithful. Right? And so, what does a mandrake stand for? That little thing, detail that's at the bottom on the kind of the margin of the thing. It stands for a prostitute, right? So you see, there's a little symbol there indicating that she's a prostitute. Here's the cleric touching her, right? I think it's kind of like on the cheek. Not